All right. So I changed up the background a little bit here. So this is the actual property. This is the actual basement apartment. You can see that there's a massive egress window right there in the living room. So Ryan, take it away. Why don't we go through some of the numbers here? So
For sure, for sure. Yeah, this was a really cool one. Definitely have to give a lot of credit to the to Mosen on this one, to the buyer. He was definitely not afraid to take action. This kind of came together like literally in a matter of a couple hours. So deals like nowhere to lie, he had 2 hours to make a decision on a firm offer.
yeah.
It worked out extremely well for him. It doesn't happen like this all the time, but it is when you see these numbers, he got rewarded for his decision, and they're not necessarily standard. But
Did he see the property before buying it, or did you have to do a
no,
walkthrough for him?
he never saw it before buying it. He went solely based off a video that I sent him.
Mm.
So
But you went through the property, you kind of talked him through it. You saw that it had the potential. So
yeah,
yeah.
it was a bit of it was a unique situation, right? Where it was already under contract, and then the people were basically going to fall through,
Mm.
and then essentially the sellers were already locked in on another property. So if they were going to lose it, they basically we had some leverage there to
Mm.
basically save their deal as well.
Perfect.
So
So
yeah,
yeah, you got a pretty steep price reduction on the purchase. So it was listed at 429. Even at that time, I know when we discussed it, like that price was already, a decent price for a property in that neighborhood. And then the fact we were able to get it for over 20,000 under asking is just wild, right? And yeah, so his initial investment, 20% down, closing costs just shy of 90,000. Let's look at his reno budget. So approximately his reno budget was around 70,000. Yeah, why don't you talk to some of the renos and the upgrades that he did to this property?
yeah. So he had it was a really nice home. It was a 1,500 square foot bungalow. The main level was a little bit dated, but very well taken care of. So he didn't have to do a lot up there. Basically taking out some carpet, replacing some flooring, doing a paint job, and then he replaced the countertop, added a backsplash, and painted the cabinets, kind of just a refresh in the kitchen to keep costs low. So basically, we did that upstairs, and then downstairs, obviously, there was a little bit more work that needed to be done. It was a big basement, obviously, with a 1,500 square foot main level. It was a sizable basement, so you can make it a very nice 2 bedroom unit. So yeah, essentially, what we did is we created they created a nice master bedroom utilizing the old fruit cellar for a nice walk-in closet there. We had to obviously update the electrical, add move actually the washer dryer, so that was also an additional expense because there was some concrete work with the drain there.
Hmm.
Um, and then he basically put in. There was a kitchen already down there, but we did basically put in. I think he put in all new cabinets and everything. But it did save on as there was all the rough-ins in terms of
Yes.
plumbing and electrical there.
Yeah.
And then just a little refresh on the bathroom. Kept a lot of the same things, but again refreshed it. So
I think
anytime we have, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I think even all the walls were like a wood panel.
Wood paneling, yeah.
Yeah. So you had insulated, drywall it, close it all
Yeah.
off, right?
Yeah, we had it was yeah, it's one of those ones where there was some things in that project where like you had to re-insulate all the walls, put up drywall even on the exterior walls. But we did have existing kitchen and existing bathroom, so you won in some areas and lost in some areas. So it was still a pretty fair, I think, overall budget there for the product you ended up getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they basically got to do basically a full conversion. Did have to do some additional work that depending when you get it was basically like there was a half unit down there set up for
Mm.
like an in-law already.
And this is kind of our philosophy, right? Even if there's an existing basement apartment, we try to up the quality of the apartment. We don't like to just rent it out as it is if we're not going to attract our ideal tenant profile, if it's going to be kind of the typical basement apartment. When you visualize what a basement apartment is, it's typically like it looks like a dungeon, it's not well lit, it's not well renovated, right? So we try to recommend to all our clients, let's up the quality. It costs a little bit more. I remember, I think I was at the property when we had Jordan take the measurements, and I met Mosin, and I think his first thought was, how do we just get this done as cheap as possible, which is fine, right? Every investor wants to keep the costs down, but in that conversation, one of the points was, let's try to up the standard a little bit, right? Let's create something that the tenant's going to be happy with, the value is going to go up. Like
Mhm.
everyone wins as a result, right? And yeah, the end product definitely was that. I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting it.
No, I think he did a great job. And I think it's one of those things too, where a lot of it has to, working with people, like obviously the contractors we work with, they're really good.
Mm,
He's probably our most used contractor, I would say.
yeah, yeah,
And he's really good at, basically putting the money where it needs to go. Right. Cause that's a huge thing. Cause if you went and talked to somebody who doesn't necessarily do, they do renovations, but they're not necessarily doing like investment focused rent ready renovations. They might come in and tell you they got to do $120,000 worth of work
yeah,
to get, basically the same kind of thing. Right.
yeah.
So, and I think, that's something where it's like, okay, we don't really want to go there. But we can do a nice job where we upgrade everything allowed so that we can get those higher quality, A-class tenants, and just makes a much more livable and nicer space for your tenants as well. Right. So,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the ARV, so the after repair value, and the new equity that's been created. So we've had two clients so far refinance their duplexes, both in similar neighborhoods, which have come back at around 625,000 each. So our best guess at this point is that his appraisal is going to come back around the same amount. Hasn't come back yet, but that's kind of our expectation since we've already had two. If that works out, he's going to get a mortgage of 500,000. His total cost of 408,000 on the purchase plus 70,000 on the renovation is a total of 478, which is one of those few crazy moments where his new mortgage is actually going to be higher than his entire purchase plus his renovations. So he's built almost $150,000 in equity in this deal. But the crazy part is after he refinances it, he's going to actually get $22,000 in his pocket. So that's in addition to his down payment, his renovation cost, and he's going to get a check for $22,000. So just wild, wild number. So why don't you speak to, I guess, what was his mindset when he purchased the property? Because obviously these numbers are amazing, right? But
oh, yeah, but we definitely didn't foresee them when it kind of came in. So yeah, when we purchased this, we were looking for something that was going to be, hopefully kind of refining around the 500 mark.
mm,
I think that's the numbers we were talking about. That was his goal, and the number was basically let's try and get out our rental money, and if we can pull out a little bit of our down payment as well, that's going to be fantastic, right?
mm,
And I think that's really a good mindset to be going in at, right? Where if there was a massive jump in the market since he purchased, and he also purchased for a very good price. So
yes.
it's not really expected that this can happen, but he basically ran his numbers. And so we were like, we used conservative numbers. It was going to work out without having extremely high expectations. And then obviously when it works out like this, where the gravy's on top, that's everybody's happy, right? We're all high fiving, and it's a good thing. So
Absolutely. I think the one thing you mentioned is key. It's some of the best deals that we buy are not necessarily known at the time of purchase. They're decent deals. They make sense from a cash flow perspective, equity perspective. It's properties that they have good potential, but we don't necessarily know how good of a deal we have until it's all said and done, right? So like you mentioned, our expectation 99% of the time when we're buying these type of properties is we're going to put in this reno budget, we're going to get that reno budget out on the refinance. The down payment is a question mark. Luckily in the last couple of years, I'd say the majority of our deals we're pulling out the entire down payment, but you can't ever like know that with 100% certainty, right? It's just there's at the time of purchase there were not any 625 refinances, so we had no frame of reference, right? What would come back. And yeah, by the time the reno were done, he was able to rent it out. Now we have other clients that started a little bit earlier than him that have the refinances. Now we know, except that right now, if you were to buy that same property, you'd probably have to pay something in the 500s, maybe going even higher, right? So if you were to buy the same property he bought now with this ARV, you would not be able to pull out your down payment, right? So this is where it's very interesting, where the ARV itself is a tough metric to determine a good deal on the purchase, right? It's great to look in hindsight and see, oh, we've done this well, we've made this much equity. But it's very tough on a purchase to just estimate that you're going to pull everything out if you're targeting the homes we're targeting, right? Good homes, good neighborhoods, solid tenant profiles, right?
Absolutely. I think it's yeah, it's definitely something to if you it's one of those things where if you sit here and you're looking for this deal, you'll never find it and you will just waste, opportunity costs, right? It'll just be
Mhm.
huge because you'll be looking for the perfect deal. And you're most likely never going to find it because it's, perfect deal is kind of almost it's like it's something that evolves and is made, I guess, essentially,
Mhm.
right? Like if you were to be able to find these deals like this in the beginning, then well, I think everybody would be doing this. It would be crazy, right?
Mhm.
So I think it goes back to our fundamentals, right? What we're looking for. We're not really looking for. Um, we're not looking for this. If this happens, that's fantastic. But we're looking for properties that we're going to be able to increase the value of the property. We're going to be able to, get out our renovation money. If we get out a little bit of the down payment, that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, we want to have a good property in a good neighborhood that's going to be cash flow positive, right? Because that's regardless of what happens with the market. Um, if we run his numbers and the market didn't jump like this, they were still good because he
Yeah.
still would have been able to pull out his renovation money. He still would
Yep.
have had a good cash flowing property.
Yep.
And so regardless of what would have happened to the market, it would have been a good buy. And I
Absolutely.
think that's, it's great when we get these leaps and bounds and, everybody makes money. But that's not the reason why we're getting into real estate investing, right? That's more like speculating or something like that. We get into this type of real estate investing, particularly these, A-class properties and good neighborhoods getting, A-class tenants for the safety and the soundness, I guess, of the investment,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah, absolutely, man. And yeah, speaking of the cash flows, let's go into first the
yeah,
expenses and then we'll go into the income. So I pulled out my little mortgage calculator, ran it with a $500,000 mortgage. So this is after his refinances, what his expenses are going to be with a 2% interest rate on a variable right now. So his mortgage is going to be 18, just shy of 1850. Property tax just shy of 250. Insurance for a duplex about 125, and utilities. In his case, he actually split the hydrometers. So this would be just gas and water, roughly 250. So all in all, he's just shy of $2,500 a month for expenses, and these are pretty standard expenses when we're looking at the typical bungalow conversions where there's two units and when a tenant is paying for their own hydro, right? So let's go into the income. So why don't you go through some of these numbers here, Ryan?
yeah. So, and I think another really great thing about this project that really is also a testament to the buyer here, the ultimate purchaser, was is you know the speed at which it got completed. It was done in basically 3 months and 2 weeks in during a pandemic, during the holidays, or like throw everything at throw all the variables you want at it, and that's basically what we had.
Yeah.
But he was on the ball, and he was very he rented it out himself, and he had it rented out basically as soon as it was ready, and did a very good job.
Mm.
And so for his upper rent, he's getting 1750 plus hydro, and honestly probably a little bit on the lower end, but he got somebody in there right away. He got
Mm.
somebody in there while they were still doing construction in the basement, really minimized his holding costs,
Mm.
um, which is good. And then the basement, I think he got 1425 plus hydro, which is nice. And again, he got that. He had a lease in place before the apartment was finished. Being
That's awesome.
rented, right? So yeah, he's did a very good job of kind of minimizing those holding costs is there as well.
Yeah. Perfect.
And then yeah, obviously we can see the numbers here after the total expenses. You got over $700 a month in cash flow, which probably would have been actually higher if we didn't get such a high of a refinance. But I don't think
Absolutely.
anybody's going to complain about that. So
Yeah. To get 700 in cash flow after pulling out everything and getting a check for 22,000 is like mind blowing, right? Because if the values weren't this high, he'd probably get a cash flow of probably over $1,000 a month. So it's like pick your poison, right? Either of them are like great options. So that's awesome.
mm,
So let's look at just total. So I kind of ran basically a 1 year profit. It's actually only been 5 months. He closed at the end of October, right? So it's only
end of
been like
November.
November. Okay, so
End of November. Yeah.
even less. Wow. So his cash flow is 700. So that's about 8,500 a year. Mortgage payment. So of his $1,800 mortgage payment, over $1,000 is paying off the mortgage every single month. So that's guaranteed profit that's being built into the property. And just in that time, he's been able to build a total of 147,000 in equity, which broken down by the number of months, it's just under 30,000 a month, which is just mind blowing once you run the numbers. But like we discussed, we had this wave of like price increases just between when he purchased and today. So definitely, it's not something we expect or ever predict when someone's buying a property. But I've seen now several of these waves happen. And even though you can't predict it, you can predict that it will likely happen over a long enough period of time.
Mhm.
Right. So if you're a long-term real estate investor, at some point in your ownership of the property, you're going to experience one of these. And if it happens right when you purchase, great. You have now all this equity you can pull out. Maybe you buy another property, up to you, right? But sometimes you have to wait a couple of years before it happens. And but either way, those come over time. And yeah, all in all, if we run his monthly profit as a result of all these three, it's just nuts, right? 30,000, 31,000 a month. And then as a total, close to 70,000, even if the property just stays the same in value for the rest of the year and he just gets his cash flow and mortgage pay down, which I mean, most people would be happy to make that in an income in a year. To actually create that in profit on a property is just mind blowing, right? And the craziest part is you've already discussed with him. He's now looking at, okay, how can he take his money out and go buy another one, right? So if he can duplicate again, to duplicate this is going to be a.
I already had that conversation with him that we're going to try not to do that. This most likely isn't going to be the case for his next one, but in the long run, kind of like you're saying, right? It's one of those things where, and that's where kind of, being, I guess, kind of consistent depending on whatever you're doing, right? If you just kind of, you're not trying to time the market and wait for this and wait for that. You just go based upon the fundamentals and, kind of stay consistent. You'll naturally gain the benefit, right? Whereas if you're trying to like bet on it when it's going to do this and do that, that's when it's it's not as smart, right? So
Absolutely.